This is Podcast Theory.
Hello again, fellow podcaster, and welcome back to Podcast Theory. I'm your host, Jason Sircone, and today it's part 3 of my 5-part series on things your podcast does not need. Now, if you jump back to the previous 2 episodes, you'll learn the first 2 items in this series were a long, worded intro and a lengthy bio read. These are things that could potentially keep your listener from getting to the reason they showed up for your content and may make them turn off your show before they ever get to the heart of the matter. That's the last thing you want. If you listen to those 2 episodes, you'll discover what I've been saying about attention span. 8.25 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, as humans, or as adults, I should say. That's where we're at. It's very, very low. And when it comes to podcasting, yes, I do believe you do have a little bit of an extended window, but the idea that we're trying to get across here is all about efficiency. You want to get your listener to the reason they showed up for the podcast as soon as possible. If you don't, you run the risk of them bailing because you may have grabbed their attention with a great title or some very nice cover art, or maybe a great show description, whatever it was, you got them in the door. Now that they're in the door, you want to show them a good time. And if you're constantly putting barriers to them getting to the reason they showed up in front of them, it's likely that they may jump out and go to another podcast. That's the last thing you want to happen. So in this series, I'm covering how you can keep that attention span in a good place, get them to the reason they showed up for your podcast as fast as possible, and ultimately help with your own efficiency. Because if you include these items, it's just more work that you have to put into this. So today's item goes as follows, and I could have included this in the last episode. I could even have included it in the next episode, but I wanted to highlight this one because it's a personal thing for me. It is my least favorite thing to hear when I tune into a new podcast. Housekeeping. Your podcast does not need housekeeping. If you put housekeeping in to your podcast, oh man, you're losing me. And you're going to lose other listeners as well. Put yourself in your listener's shoes and think about this on a grand scale outside of podcasting. Of course, yes, podcasting. You show up because you've been waiting to hear this episode, or you've been looking to hear more about the subject. Or maybe you go to the movie theater and you've been dying to see this new film. Or a new show is coming out and you're all pumped up and ready to watch. But the networks, the producers, they put all this bullshit in front of you, all these ads, all these commercials, all these things that, yeah, inside you might be like, come on, it's like building up the excitement, right? But at the same time, there's this level of annoyance where you're like, damn it, just get to the freaking point here. Get to why I showed up. And that's something that housekeeping, it can completely throw somebody off because they did not come to your podcast for housekeeping. They don't need to hear about X, Y, and Z and why it's important to you. They want to hear about what you did to hook them. There's a certain subject that you've put on the table. And by clicking play, this individual has told you, you've got what I need. You're giving me a good reason to show up and take in this content. But I'm not here to hear that long worded bio. I am not here for you to keep this long worded intro in front of me that might take a minute and a half to even get to the main part of it. And then you go, before we get to the show, let's take care of some housekeeping items. You're going to lose me. I'm telling you, I'm out. And there are a lot of other listeners out there that will feel the same way because, again, going right back to what I said before, 8.25 seconds, that is our attention span. Is it slightly extended with podcasts? I believe yes, but not by much. If you've got somebody's attention, you've captured them, you've got them clicking play, you want to get them to the reason they showed up very quickly, and housekeeping is just going to be another barrier that keeps them from that good content that they showed up for. So do not have this introduction with housekeeping items. Now, if you do have an announcement to make, Put it at the end of your podcast. Maybe even in the intro, you can say, stick around to the end. I have an important announcement that I want to share with you. Now you've set up a little bit of a cliffhanger. You could even build that into your podcast episode. Maybe if it's part of your interview, you could say, we talked about X, Y, and Z, and that led me to something that I want to share with you. Stay tuned till the end. I'm going to tell you all about it. Something like that is fine. But if you just go into this bullet pointed list of things that you want to take care of, you want to get them wiped off your to-do list. As a listener, that's not what I'm here for. Keep your podcast focused on the reason your listeners show up, and you're going to retain them for a longer period of time. Get them to the end of the show. And then if you do have that important announcement to make it then, or do a bonus episode. You don't have to have this housekeeping section, because sometimes, and I've heard this on other podcasts, it can come off as very salesy. That housekeeping can be this long-winded sales pitch. And believe me, I'm not against having an ad or two on your podcast if it promotes the products and services that you offer in addition to your podcast. In fact, I encourage that. But you need to place those in the right area of your podcast, and don't let it keep your listener from getting into the heart of your content. That's what you need to do, because if you place an ad in the middle when they're already invested in what you have to say, you're more than likely going to get them to listen to that ad, thus hearing the message that you want to deliver, and then hopefully take action because you've delivered a good message when they're already invested. They're already here for the content. You don't want to do this at the beginning when they have a chance to bail because they haven't been impacted yet. A housekeeping section will not impact your audience. You have to think about that listener experience, and you have to think about their attention spans. Get them to the reason they showed up as fast as possible. That has been the overarching theme of this series thus far, and it will be on the next 2 episodes as I wrap it up. Get your listener to that content as fast as possible, because that's going to make all the difference. That's going to allow them to get invested in your show. That's going to up your retention numbers. That is going to get them in a position where they're feeling so impacted by your content that they start telling others that they need to listen as well. No one is going to run to their friends, run to their family, run to their colleagues and say, you've got to listen to this show. It has an amazing housekeeping section. That's never happened. I'm willing to bet the farm on that. Maybe I'm wrong. No, I don't think I'm wrong. I can't see anybody saying, dude, the housekeeping section on Podcast Theory was kick-ass, man. Go tune in. That doesn't seem likely. Get your listener to the reason they showed up and get housekeeping out of the podcast. Again, if you do want to put an announcement into your show, put it at the end, maybe tee it up at the beginning. Give your listener a reason to stay till the end outside of that content. If you've got something big to announce, keep them invested with a great show and then tack that onto the end. They're going to be more likely to stay for that because you've entertained them, you've educated them, you've given them everything they showed up for throughout that episode. That's what it's all about. So now we're 3 parts deep into this. You don't need that long worded intro. You don't need a bio read. You can let your guest tell their story, and you do not need housekeeping. Eliminate that from your podcast production agenda immediately. Or if you are going to utilize somewhat of a housekeeping quote unquote thing, make sure it's a very quick, snappy announcement saying, I've got a big announcement for you. I want you to hear this. Stick around to the end. I'm going to drop some knowledge on you when this show wraps up. Tee it up the right way. Get your audience into the content. That's what they're there for. You've done a great job getting them hooked because they clicked play. Don't lose them in the beginning because you're taking care of the housekeeping items. That's not fun. Get them to the reason they're there. That's what it's all about. So that's going to conclude today's installment of Podcast Theory. I'll be back on the next episode with number 4 in this 5-part series of 5 things your podcast does not need. Until that happens and our paths cross again, this has been Jason Sircone on Podcast Theory. Good talk. I'll see you out there.